There is a piece of software you have already used 100 times today without ever once thinking about it. It runs the servers behind the sites you opened this morning, the phone in your hand, the car you drove, the cloud your company lives on. This is the story of the Linux kernel and why, once you understand it, you cannot help but love it. In 2021, a small helicopter lifted off the surface of Mars, the first powered flight on another world. The software holding it steady in that impossibly thin air was Linux, the same kernel that boots the Android phone in your pocket. Think about that for a moment. A wristwatch on someone's arm and a machine flying on another planet running the same source code, one kernel across the entire range of human computing. Once you start looking, you find it everywhere. Android, which is Linux underneath, runs on billions of phones. The majority of the public cloud is Linux. Every single one of the 500 fastest supercomputers on Earth runs it. Your home router, your smart television, the controller buried inside your car. Billions of devices, wildly different from one another, all leaning on one shared source tree, a piece of infrastructure this load bearing and almost no one ever thinks about it. It did not arrive as infrastructure. In August of 1991, a second year student in Helsinki named Linus Torvalds posted a message to a mailing list. "I'm doing a free operating system," he wrote, "just a hobby, won't be big and professional." He was asking strangers what features they might like. The thing now sitting under the entire modern world began as a question posted by someone who did not think it would matter. There was an argument early on about how to build a kernel. The fashionable idea was to break it into many small, isolated pieces. A respected professor told Torvalds the design was obsolete, that he would have failed the course for it. Torvalds made the opposite bet. One large program, running as a single fast unit, but able to load new parts while it runs. Monolithic, but modular. More than 30 years later, that is still the kernel booting when you turn almost anything on. Here is the first idea worth admiring. Your program does not get to touch the hardware. It lives in a protected region called user space, walled off from the disk, the network, the memory chips, all of it. When it needs something real, it has to ask through a narrow, guarded opening called a system call. Two worlds, user space above and the kernel below, and exactly one door between them. That boundary is why a single misbehaving program cannot bring down the whole machine. It is also why the system is something you can actually reason about. Now, the part that feels like magic. On a single processor core, only one thing can truly run at any instant. And yet, your machine runs hundreds of programs at once, none of them visibly waiting. The kernel does this with a scheduler. It lets a program run for a sliver of time, a few milliseconds, then interrupts it, saves exactly where it was, and hands the core to the next one. It does this thousands of times a second so smoothly that every program is fooled into believing it has the machine to itself. That is preemptive multitasking, and it is holding an illusion together underneath everything you do. The kernel tells another beautiful lie, this one about memory. Every process is handed its own private map of the machine and told, in effect, all of this is yours. But it isn't. Behind the curtain, the kernel is juggling thousands of these private maps, translating each one onto the real, shared, physical memory, quietly moving pieces out to disk and back when it runs short. No process can see any other's memory. Each one lives inside a kind lie, and the kernel keeps every one of those lies straight, all at once, without fail. There is one idea that ties the whole system together, and it is almost suspiciously simple. Almost everything is a file. A hard drive is a file. A network connection is a file. A running process, a sensor, your mouse, the temperature of a processor core. All of them you can open, read, write, and close with the same small handful of operations. You want to know how hot your processor is? You read a file, fewer concepts to carry in your head, and because of that, far more reach. Elegance in the oldest engineering sense of the word. So, how does one kernel speak to a wristwatch and a supercomputer and a helicopter on Mars? Patiently. Around 60% of the entire code base of roughly 40 million lines is drivers. The unglamorous, endless work of teaching the kernel to talk to one more chip, one more network card, one more sensor. Nearly every piece of hardware humanity has built slowly taught to a single shared body of code. That is why the same source can scale from something on your wrist to something that fills a room. And somewhere in learning all of this, something shifts. The kernel stops being a black box humming under your feet, the place where problems go to become unsolvable. You start to see the boundaries, user space and kernel space, the scheduler, the system calls. And you realize it is not magic, it is a system, one you can read, one that finally makes the machine make sense. You stop being afraid of the bottom of the stack. That is the moment the plumbing becomes a friend. And here is the part that should not work, but does. No company owns the Linux kernel. More than 2,000 developers contribute to a single release. They come from over 1,000 organizations, many of them fierce competitors, sitting down together in the same code. A change does not get in because of who you are. It gets in by surviving public review on a mailing list and earning the trust of a maintainer. Built in the open by strangers, many of whom will never once meet in person. Sit with the whole picture, 40 million lines of code, rewritten in the open roughly every 9 weeks, changed constantly by thousands of people who have never shaken hands, carrying the servers, the phones, the cloud, the cars, the supercomputers, a helicopter on another planet. A thing this load bearing, built this openly, ought to be fragile. And after 34 years, it holds. It quietly, reliably holds. That is the quiet marvel of it. The most important software in the world was not locked away and it was not sold. It was built in the open by strangers and given away for free. It is the floor beneath the phone in your pocket and the helicopter on Mars, and it asks nothing of you, not even that you notice. Just a hobby, he said. It got a little bigger. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you want me to explain next.